Greetings, citizens, and thanks for tuning in to Nindie Nation. I'm Jeff, and today on episode 116, we've got more than 20 brand new indie games coming to the Nintendo Switch through the week ending June 6th. After the new releases, we'll check out some of the best eShop deals this week and help you find just the thing to keep your Joy-Cons synced. If you like our weekly indie rundowns, toss us a like and subscribe to the channel. Check us out on Twitter, come hang out with us on Discord, and stop by the YouTube channel on Thursday night for the Nindies at Night stream. There's a lot to cover this week, citizens, but as you know, before we get to the new releases, we first need to check out the games that snuck onto the eShop over the past week. So let's kick off episode 116 of Nindie Nation by taking a look at the 9 Neglected Nindies that released since episode 115. From the pile labeled, "I don't know what to think of this," comes Sieben Strikes Nerdventure by Golden Orb for $14.99. It's a hand-drawn narrative adventure about a group of D&D players. It's very lighthearted and seems to represent a wide-ranging cast of characters through a story full of puzzles and quirky situations. Cubite Interactive releases an unfinished game for $1.99, but that's not me being a smartass. It's called Missing Feature 2D and is quite literally a retro platformer where the game builds itself as you progress through it. The shtick is cute, but I'm concerned it would get old quickly when even the edited trailer shows a lot of fake loading screens, which I could see getting annoying. Last week, East Asia Soft released a title that looked so bad, I had to pick it up for myself. That game is Hentai vs. Evil, and it dropped on sale for $7.99. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten around to trying this mindless third-person horde shooter yet, but stop by Nindies at Night on Thursday and we'll check it out together. Developer Hidden Fields brought their first-person horror adventure Mundaun to the Switch for $19.99. It's published by MWM Interactive, who recently worked on Creature in the Well and is publishing Oxenfree 2 later this year. Mundaun has decent reviews so far and is a slower, more puzzle-based horror game with an old-timey sepia tone. With so many zombie-based or run-from-the-monsters spooky games out there, Mundaun might be one to consider if you've been itching for a new game to creep you out. And then the team at Playism released what looks like a retro JRPG-styled visual novel called Nite for $9.99. I guess it's about a girl that's a dragon. There's really no helpful information in this game's description whatsoever. The Nindie No-Nos are practically sponsored by Ultimate Games this week, as they forgot to tell anyone about 3 games that dropped out of nowhere. Or did they? The first one is Contract for $6.99. It's a hyper-violent twin-stick shooter that looks to be a poor man's Hotline Miami, and according to the description, features
a lot of slow-motion whoa moments.
Then they released the kind of game that I'm sure someone will tell me is actually better than I'm giving it credit for. It's called Felix the Toy, it's $5, and it's a PS1-style 3D platformer where you run around a room and pick up coins. Maybe it's not so bad, but come on. Does anyone really think this is the best way to spend your precious game time? The third Ultimate Games release is one of those that looks awful, but might be fun for a laugh. With Cowcatcher, also for $4.99, Dev4Play created an absolute cluster of a world where you fly around as a dude in a wingsuit and use a bungee cord to pick up cows and place them on a target. It looks abysmal, yet I find myself strangely drawn into its stupidity. Then we got
Best Sniper Legacy Dino Hunt and Shooter 3D,
which has you hunting dinosaurs, zombies, things that are extinct or no longer alive. If we're lucky, that list will soon include the game's publisher T-Bull as well. Piotr Skalski put 2 floating heads on a screen and called it Pixel Head Soccer. He claims it has replay value, but is probably just thinking more so of his ability to hit copy and paste with reckless abandon. And I assume I'm not the only one who wishes someone would take out publisher Sabec, because they released Spy Alarm, which uses the Joy-Con's camera to take a picture and make a noise if the picture changes.
I hear it's great if you want someone to watch your back while you try to fleece as many eShop visitors as possible.
Finally, the team who are most definitely not going to end up on a registered sex offender list, Voltage, have released Kings of Paradise.
Newly divorced, you've been left unemployed, penniless, and homeless. However, socialite kings living on the top floor of a luxury apartment building have hired you to be their, quote, housekeeper. Remember, these are no ordinary men.
Alright, boys and girls, break out the Nintendo seal of quality, my friends, because we have a game that lets you live out your fantasy of being a rich man who, along with 3 other men, pay a vulnerable woman to live with them while they compete to see whose sexual advances can break her first. What the fuck is wrong with you, Voltage? Not really seeing anything from last week, though Mundaun might be worthwhile for you horror fans. Drop in the comments below your best jab at one of these shovelware publishers, and I'll use a couple in next week's episode. Now, let's move on. These are the 18 games hitting the eShop through June 6th. The better side of Ultimate Games is represented at the start of the week on June 1st, when they partner with Digital Melody Games to release Just in Danger for $4.99. It's a cute little obstacle platformer with an Indiana Jones motif. It's not out to change video games as we know them, but it could be a fun distraction to play in between larger experiences. And for whatever reason, we've got more games about shooting dinosaurs, but in this case, Digital Dreams is apparently remastering a classic by delivering Carnivore's Dinosaur Hunt for $14.99. Set up less like a shooter and more like an actual hunting game. Instead of deer and bears, you're hunting dinosaurs. Just don't let them catch you on the porta potty. On Wednesday, June 2nd, Renko Games and East Asia Soft drop Dungeon Escape for $4.99. It's a tough-as-nails instant retry platformer, just like Super Meat Boy, but it doesn't appear to bring anything new or different to the tried-and-true formula or the crowded genre itself. And next, by publisher Aniplex, is a game that is based on a manga, but I'm not sure exactly which part in the title. Everyday Eighth Note, today's menu for Amiya family, is the manga. Either way, it appears to be a collection of cooking mini-games with a story that, like the game itself, is almost certainly aimed squarely at the manga superfans. Especially for $50.
Are you ready for some hardcore anime mechs? If you like flying around in the sky as a pensive anime chick in a badass mech, boy, do we got the game for you.
All kidding aside, I think the best way I can describe Wing of Darkness is that it looks a lot like a cooler version of Daemon X Machina. Granted, I'm about as read up on mech combat games and anime as I am speaking the language of the Andamanesi. That's the most remote civilization on Earth. It's my way of saying I don't know what the f*** I'm talking about here. But I do think this game by Clouded Leopard Entertainment looks pretty cool. Just read up on it first, because it launches on the 2nd for $30. Last up on June 2nd is a game that has been free on the Epic Games Store for the past year, and I've spent a good 3 hours with, but I still have no idea what it is. Sludge Life by Terry Velman and Dose One, published by Devolver Digital, is it's something. It's like Beavis and Butthead or Ren and Stimpy type humor, where you roll around an open world as a ball of garbage or slime and you just kinda mess with stuff. There's some mini games, you can talk to people, there's also a dedicated fart button, so there's that. It's maybe almost sorta kinda maybe like an Animal Crossing, but without any of the things that you actually do in Animal Crossing. There's a back-of-the-box quote. It launches for $12.74, and if you can figure out what this game is, I would love to know. Before the big Thursday drop on June 3rd, let's quickly take a look at games that you definitely should not buy. Games like Fine 10 Differences by Kistler Benjamin, who dragged clip art of vegetables onto the screen and smiled at his mom as she said,
"Good work, sweetie. You made a video game."
Or like Grand Slam Tennis, which was a valiant effort by Benjamin's uncle Benoit Verace to copy and paste a tennis demo.
He really is our special boy.
Or like eSolutions Nordic, who, after releasing their latest antivirus update, provided their own copy and paste with FreeCell Solitaire Collection, which I swear was already released last week. No? Maybe. As those three climbed the mountain that can only be described by Jeff Goldblum in 1993's Jurassic Park as...
That is one big pile of shit.
They looked upwards and saluted as they saw Indie Nova planting their flag in the peak with Reversi, Let's Go. Thankfully, the game that kicks off the big Thursday drop on June 3rd is probably my favorite of the week. Dangan Entertainment's Astalon Tears of the Earth launches for $19.99 and has a demo available right now, so go check it out. It's an 8-bit action platformer about 3 characters who progress through a tower where death is how you get stronger. It's a really cool concept that reminds me of how Hades approached the roguelike format. You progress as far as you can, switching between your characters as combat or puzzles require, and the further you get, the more currency you collect, the more you can upgrade your characters upon your inevitable demise. The 8-bit art style falls somewhere between the retro Castlevania titles and Cathedral, which released earlier this year, and it looks great. Astalon Tears of the Earth is one of 2 titles this week that tie for Nindie Nation's Pick of the Week. I loved what I played of the demo, and look forward to checking out the full game with all of you this Thursday on Nindies at Night.
Holy Cow Productions
Is a studio that does both original and outsourced development, and honestly, I've never played a game of theirs that I've really dug, but this week's release is looking pretty fun. Mystic Pillars, a story-based puzzle game, is, it's a story-based puzzle game. It uses a type of Mancala rule set to create puzzles that help carry an interesting story that takes place in Indian mythology with hand-drawn art that does a great job of giving this game its own identity. It's won its fair share of indie awards and might be a good little brain teaser that's worth picking up when it launches for $6.29. Publisher CFK has also released a bunch of games that I've been interested in but have never played, and this week's game just might win me over. No idea how to pronounce this. I think it's it's probably Witch. That would make sense. Either way, it's an action platformer that appears heavily inspired by games like Hollow Knight and the GBA Castlevania titles. You play as a witch who can fight in short or long range, and there's a variety of platforming like sliding, flying, and grappling to play with as well. The bosses shown in the trailer look like a lot of fun, and while I'll admit it looks a little cheap in the art department, it does release for only $7.99, so I'll let that slide. Anyone else really digging this one? I think I might pick this one up, whatever it's called. According to developer Yeetah Games,
Motif is a minimalistic puzzle game that brings artistic elements to the foreground.
you move and transform shapes to match the end result that's presented to you beforehand. It does look relaxing and could be somewhat therapeutic, and it's only $3, but it looks best suited for touch controls, so it might be better to check it out on your phone unless you're used to rubbing your fingers all over your Switch's screen, which I personally try to avoid. You dirty, dirty people, you, touching your screen and poking with all your Cheeto fingers and... Continuing the lineup of furry-friendly games from last week, Klache and Crunching Koala release Winds of Change this week for $19.99. Unlike Weaving Tides from last week, Winds of Change is much more of a visual novel with some point-and-click elements. It's a dark fantasy setting, and it features a story about a group of, well, you know what, if you're into furries and visual novels, this is probably a safe bet. Then, Nindie newcomer Games from Earth partners with Bonus Stage Publishing to release their challenging platformer Sunblaze for $14.99. In an already crowded genre, Sunblaze has all the spikes and traps that you're accustomed to dodging, but features more puzzle elements and a more attractive visual style than these games usually do. These games are a dime a dozen, and especially Sunblaze seems to be on the pricier side. So if this is what you're looking for, it might be worth putting on your wish list and waiting for a sale. There's still more releasing before the end of the week, and a couple of games which look really solid. But before we get to that, here's a few upcoming eShop gems worth scrolling right on by. PixArts leads the way for shovelware with Caesar Empire War, which is definitely an asset flip featuring just as much quality as Caesar himself was a pacifist. Good old Uncle Jeff with the Roman history gags. And Zombie Raid, I would argue, doesn't even qualify as a game, which makes sense coming from PixArts. Atypical Games throws a bunch of tanks on a screen without knowing how tanks work in Infinite Tanks World War II. I say that because in the trailer, tanks are jumping off ramps, but not like, whoa, cool, look at the tanks going off the ramps. It's more like, why is that tank falling over the side of that ramp? That doesn't look right. ShotX Studio ports possibly the most bland, generic, and overall janky trifecta in quite some time with Dungeons of Clay for $6.99. Maybe I'm off here, but looking at the gameplay, I just can't imagine this is very fun. However, it does include procedurally generated dungeons and roguelike mechanics and RPG elements. Sorry, Dungeons of Clay, you're not getting the real thing. And Baltoro Games thought,
Hey, it's been a while since we've filled a tile on the eShop.
and they control-V'd Sweet Bakery Tycoon while no one was looking. Our friends over at
Game National!
drop Pyre on Fire, and while it appears to be little more than a cartridge of garbage, a file of vile, or a game so lame, the description does state,
Find the 10 pages before a woman can die.
so that's something. Cubic Games makes me feel like a disappointed parent who just found their child backing the family dog into a corner with a jar of peanut butter. Because I know they're better than this. Nonetheless, Arcane Arts Academy just might be the most mobile game a mobile game can mobile. Ugh, just look at this thing. Look at it. Why, Cubic? Look, Cubic, I know you're not going to be the prom king, and I've accepted that. You've accepted that. We've all accepted that. But I'm sure there's a perfectly fine girl or boy out there for you if you just try a little harder. And please do, because I'm not covering for you if Mom asks why Lassie is limping. Not nearly as insulting, at least, is Cubic's other release, Tiny Lands. It's an isometric, side-by-side world where you spin the camera around and look for hidden objects. Oh, look, is that a game over there? No, it's not. And the final Garbo game of the week comes by way of with their latest masterpiece, Hunted Dawn: The Zombie Apocalypse for $14.99. It is described as
A single-play FPS game with a story about escaping zombies to survive. The suspenseful stages in various places such as subway, hospital, school, and so on. Enjoy the satisfactory playtime. You can enjoy a suspenseful play. The long-awaited ending is waiting for you.
Back in the land of video games, we begin our wrap-up of the week with Digital Melody Games' Nature Matters for $4.99. As one of the better-looking titles from Ultimate Games, it's a chill, isometric puzzle game where you move across a diorama without retracing your steps in order to kind of paint in every block of the puzzle. Radaleka's release for the week is an interesting take on what I guess you could call a side-scrolling shmup mixed with an arcade brawler. Donuts and Justice is an excellent title for an 80s cop movie-inspired game, and FobT Interactive created an auto-scrolling shooter where you play as cops mowing down waves of enemies. As usual, it's a $5 release, and I kinda like it. Expect to see this puppy also on Nindies at Night this Thursday. Stage Clear Studios is an indie dev we've talked about before, with games like Snaky Bus and Tower of Time under their belt, and while they're working with publisher Outright Games this week, I still think it's relevant to cover their newest release, if for no other reason than because I think it looks like fun and this is my show, damn it. The Last Kids on Earth and the Staff of Doom is apparently a young adult franchise with a recent Netflix adaptation for kids about said kids surviving a lighthearted zombie apocalypse. In this top-down action RPG for up to 4 players, you traverse a semi-open world battling enemies with Ratchet and Clank-style weapons and constantly gathering blueprints to make you and your team even more destructive. It's $40, so it's more in the AA price range, and it is a licensed property with a publisher, albeit a smaller one. So, does it count as a Nindie? I don't know, but I think it looks like good fun, so we're covering it. In 2019, Umaiki Games released Skellboy, a quirky voxel-style action RPG that was a lot of irreverent fun despite being simple and kinda mindless. This week, they're giving it a glow-up with Skellboy Refractured, which launches with a discount for $16 even. It's mostly the same game, but with a new Game Plus mode and a randomized dungeon, and for the most part, that's a good thing. It's kinda, well, actually, it's a lot like Minecraft Dungeons, despite Skellboy releasing first, but with more platforming and puzzle solving, and combat that has you hacking and slashing or strafing and shooting. It could be a great game to play through with a kid if you happen to have any of those running around your house, and is a title that I will be putting on my own wishlist. After like 18 months without a new table, Super Power Up Games is dropping Basketball Pinball for $2.99. So now there's that. And last but most certainly not least, the game that is also tied for Nindie Nation's Pick of the Week is Blast Mode's incredible-looking run-and-gun shooter Mighty Goose, launching on June 5th for $19.99. Inspired by games like Contra, Blazing Chrome, and maybe a bit of Mega Man, you play as a badass goose in a badass mech with a ridiculous amount of badass weaponry set to bombastic set pieces and a totally bitchin' soundtrack. Just look at this game. How great does this look? It looks awesome. There's a bunch of different weapons and abilities like hover jumps, dashes, and the like. This just looks like a riot, and I can't wait to play it. The goose is loose! I love it. Good job, marketing. Mighty Goose and Astalon are definitely my picks for the week, but I could see titles like Skellboy, Donuts and Justice, and Witch all being worthwhile pickups as well. Let me know what's jumping out to you down in the comments. If for some reason you didn't find something for you in this week's new releases, don't fret, my friend, because here come 9 of our picks for the best Nindie deals at their lowest prices ever through at least June 6th. Dwarf Journey is a pretty new game we played a few weeks back on Nindies at Night, and one which I spent a good deal of time with well after that stream concluded. It's a very simple but very competent 2D roguelike with a progression loop that makes it really easy to say one more run. And while it isn't the best the genre has to offer, at only $5.59, a 30% discount makes this a safe bet that comes complete with procedurally generated levels, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! And on the opposite end of the roguelike spectrum, Fury Unleashed is one of my favorites, and it has a demo so you can check it out for yourself. It's a fast-paced 2D run-and-gun of sorts that brings some twin-stick shooting and super quick platforming into the mix that's set to the backdrop of a comic book inspired by 80s action movies. At $9.49, a 53% discount is the lowest it's ever been, and it also brings its own dose of procedurally generated levels, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! But if it's multiplayer mayhem on the couch you're after, one of the best in the genre released last year in Moving Out, and it's currently half off for $12.49. You'll cooperate, have fun, build bonds, and then end up yelling at each other and almost killing each other as you play through the ridiculous physics-driven world of a totally inept moving company. If you like Overcooked, Moving Out is absolutely a game that you should not miss. And as one of the most ridiculous games ever conceived, Rainbows, Toilets, and Unicorns is a vertically scrolling shmup loaded with memes, poop jokes, and surprisingly fun gameplay. At 40% off, don't expect this game to blow you away, but if you think this kind of humor is funny, $4.19 is a perfectly reasonable price for a shmup that'll give you a good weekend or so of fun and some cheap laughs. Dicey Dungeons is what I would consider my personal sleeper hit of 2020, and it snuck in just before the end of the year. It's a deck-building card game with a simple premise that builds on itself to become quite the deep experience, and it's all set to the tune of a silly TV game show and includes incredible music. Like others on today's list, Dicey Dungeons is 40% off for $8.99 and also includes procedurally generated levels, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! Do you have fond nostalgia for the early 3D arcade racers like Daytona USA? If so, go get Hotshot Racing right now while it's half off for $10. It delivers exactly that style of arcade racing experience, but with a ton of content, upgradable vehicles, and a slew of different modes to keep you busy. Alongside Horizon Chase Turbo, Hotshot Racing is one of my favorite racers on the Switch. Kill It With Fire is a hidden gem, if you will. As a first-person shooter of sorts that has you using everything possible, from clipboards to guns to throwing stars to flamethrowers and bazookas, to hunt down and destroy any spider you can find. I think it's a tough sell at full price, but at 50% off, $7.49 is a great price for a dumb little game that reminds us why video games can be so much fun, even when they don't make any sense. The Adventures of Elena Temple, however, is a tried-and-true callback to the simple puzzle platformers of yesteryear, going so far as to recreate all kinds of 8-bit and earlier PC and gaming consoles to display it on. The gameplay and design will feel right at home if you grew up with games like this, but is also of high enough quality to win over newcomers alike. At only $1.99, Elena Temple is an easy recommendation. And lastly, Distropolis is another title among my favorites of 2020, this one being a no-frills twin-stick shooter that does everything in the gameplay department just right. There's very little here in terms of content, but it's still a game that I come back to constantly when I'm in between bigger experiences. $3.99 is a great price for this simple but fun shooter, and is another one that we've played during Nindies at Night if you want to go back and see more. There's even more out there on sale right now, going under Velocity 2X. Let me know what you're picking up in the comments, and come hang out with us on Discord because we've got a deals channel that is always humming with new deals and recommendations. Don't forget you can find us on Twitter at Nindie Nation, and if you like what we do here, your like, subscribe, and sharing of Nindie Nation is very much appreciated and goes a long way to helping us grow. If you're playing through Oxenfree, or you've recently completed it, please check in with us on Discord so that we can start building a list of who wants to participate in Round 2 of the Nindie Backlog Club. And every Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern, we play some of the week's newest releases during Nindies at Night, and last week we returned to YouTube for the stream, and it was great to see all of you there again. We'll be back this week, hopefully with Mighty Goose and Astalon and others, so we hope to see you there. Upcoming new releases are looking a bit slim right now, but that's because E3 is right around the corner, and I fully expect to see some exciting Nindie shadow drops over our next couple episodes. But that's all for next week, citizens, and as far as today goes, we're all done here. Thanks for stopping by today. Until next time, I'm Jeff. This has been Nindie Nation episode 116, for the second time I've had to record it. And remember, no matter what type of game you're looking for, Nindie Nation will be right here to help you find just the thing to keep your Joy-Cons synced.